call the honourable member, can I apologise and correct my omission? I should have put the question that the House is debating. The question is the motion be agreed to. Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. First of all, on behalf of the Green Party, I'd the best wishes for the season, and particularly to the Speaker, our Speaker, who his heart and soul into the job, probably more than any other Speaker I've seen since I've been here, and we certainly appreciate his efforts to get ministers to answer the questions at question time rather than to talk around them. The Green Party, like the previous two speakers, also wishes to send its greetings to all those many people in this complex who help us do our work, including the ushers, security staff, police, messengers, the travel office people, Bellamy's workers, librarians, everyone in the clerk's office, including all the select committee staff, and not to forget, of course, our own personal or party staff, executive assistants, out of Parliament people, administrative research and media staff. And finally, this Christmas we shouldn't forget those largely unseen but hard-working people who clean our offices at night, who Phil Goff just mentioned are underpaid, and also the Green Party is concerned at the underpayment of the security staff, and we strongly support them in their negotiations and collective action through the PSA to get a better deal. Christmas is a time of goodwill to all men and women, and I think we should be thinking particularly of those poor families who will not have the wherewithal to have a sumptuous Christmas dinner or to buy much in the way of presents for their kids. Unfortunately, New Zealand is becoming a more unequal society with serious levels of poverty, and flowing from that we have a serious crime problem. However, at Christmas we should have compassion both for the victims of offences and for criminals in jail and for the families of both of them. It was estimated on Radio New Zealand this morning that there are 20,000 children of prisoners, and we should remember them because they won't be having a very good Christmas with their father or mother in jail. This year, Chief Justice Sian Elias gave us a strong hint that we should be looking at other ways of reducing crime than just locking up more and more people for longer. The decade-long battle between Labour and National about who can be the toughest on criminals has resulted in New Zealand having one of the highest imprisonment rates in the Western world, and only the Greens and the Māori Party have argued for a better approach, focusing more on restorative justice and rehabilitation rather than punishment. Mind you, there is one crime that the Greens are thinking of adding to the statute books, and that is a crime against the climate. But this may not get a majority in the House because some of the current members here might end up being incarcerated. Which brings me to Copenhagen. MPs on the spot, Jeanette Fitzsimons and Kennedy Graham, say the rallying cry on Copenhagen streets this week has been climate justice, which means that rich countries with higher per capita emissions have to take the prime responsibility for reducing our their greenhouse gas emissions, and also make a huge financial contribution to the poorer countries to allow them to move to a lower carbon economy. The need for climate justice shows how we cannot solve fundamental environmental problems, and climate change is the preeminent one, without addressing the social and economic inequalities in the world between nations and within nations. And this also highlights why the Greens are so strong on international human rights, because countries that are not democratic are generally despoilers of the environment. We're disappointed in this respect that John Key has followed Helen Clark in keeping ministers away from the Dalai Lama when he visits to satisfy the political mandarins in Beijing. 4 Green MPs did meet the Dalai Lama when he visited this month. His comments on what was happening on the Tibetan Plateau were alarming. The massive deforestation by Chinese loggers can only increase greenhouse gas emissions, and it can also reduce rainfall on the plateau. And when you combine this with global warming melting the glaciers on the Tibetan Plateau, we are looking at an environmental and social catastrophe, because almost half of the world's population in South Asia, East Asia and Southeast Asia relies on water coming from the Tibetan Plateau. The one-party dictatorship in China is simply not up to solving such a vital ecological problem, which is why we must strongly support all the democratic forces in China, be they harassed Chinese human rights campaigners or those wanting more rights for the Tibetan and Uyghur people. The urgency of massive expenditure by rich countries to combat climate change also shows as one reason why we should be against wars such as that being prosecuted by the United States in Afghanistan, unfortunately with the assistance of our SAS. Around $1.4 trillion is currently being spent annually on military equipment and fighting wars. Wouldn't it be a better use of that money to spread renewable power generations in poorer countries rather than use that money to drop bombs on them? Next year, the Green Party will be continuing to challenge the largely business-as-usual economic policies of National Labour. We know this unsettles those wedded to economic orthodoxy, where the dominant measure of economic health appears to be the growth of GDP, largely through producing more consumer goods and further drawing down on the world's scarce resources. We are confident that next year there will be even more New Zealanders agreeing with the Greens about the need for a more intelligent approach for a more sustainable economic future. This has been a year of transition for the Greens, with nearly half of our caucus being first-term MPs, including David Clendon, who replaced Sue Bradford when she left recently. Sue Bradford achieved so much for us during her 10 years in Parliament and won huge public respect. We've also been lucky to have Russell Norman and Miteria Ture so capably step into the shoes of our founding co-leaders Rod Donald and Jeanette Fitzsimons. Here's a sample of what we in the Green Party have achieved this past year. We've put a lot of work into what we call the Green New Deal, that is a green answer to the combined economic and environmental crisis that we face. We're able to advance some of the items under this Green New Deal under our Memorandum of Understanding with National to work together on issues where we can agree. This includes the $323 million home insulation scheme to make 180,000 homes warmer and drier. Another project consistent with the Green New Deal has been the National Cycleway, where our MP Kevin Haig has been working closely with John Key. Mind you, most of what National has done is not socially or environmentally friendly and has increased greenhouse gas emissions, such as the focus on new motorway construction in and around Wellington and Auckland, which will only encourage more travel by cars. Much of the national program has eroded gains of previous years, often through reduced funding. And this includes the ACC levy rises, cuts to night school funding, less support for community organisations, plus Resource Management Act amendments. But even when we haven't been able to defeat a bad bill, we've sometimes been able to moderate it. In the debate over the RMA amendments, for example, Russell Norman teamed up with community and environmental groups to ensure that Kiwis still have some say over our water, land and wildlife. Russell has been a champion of progressive tax and banking reform and blew the whistle on proposals for factory farming, dairy farming in the Mackenzie country. Miteria Ture has shone light on National's plans to allow some level of mining in our conservation estate. We say love our national parks and protect them, don't mine them. Catherine Dalla Delahunty has battled for New Zealanders to be given information about toxic sites, which took a big step forward with new rules coming in to require councils to make public what they know. And Sue Kedgley has kept up the good fight for consumers to know where their food comes from.
Order.
Fingers crossed.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable